There are moments in history where one voice shapes the lives of millions. And then there are moments when that voice causes harm that echoes for generations. Today we are going to speak honestly about Sigmund Freud. This is a name that has been elevated, protected, and repeated as a pillar of psychology. Yet beneath that image, there is something deeply unsettling. This conversation is inspired by The Assault on Truth by Jeffrey Moussaieff Masson. And what it reveals deserves your full attention. Before we question the legacy, we need to understand the man. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 in Freiburg, a small town in what is now the Czech Republic. He later moved to Vienna, where he spent most of his life and built his career. Freud trained as a neurologist, studying the human brain at a time when psychology as we know it did not yet exist. He became deeply interested in the hidden layers of the mind, what he would later call the unconscious. In the late 1800s, Freud began working with patients experiencing what was then called hysteria. Through these cases, he developed early ideas about trauma, memory, and repression. By the 1890s, he introduced psychoanalysis, a method that aimed to uncover buried thoughts through techniques like free association and dream interpretation. In 1900, he published The Interpretation of Dreams, a work that would become one of the most influential texts in psychology. Over the following decades, he introduced theories that would define his legacy, including the structure of the mind, the role of sexuality in development, and the Oedipus complex. Freud's influence spread rapidly across Europe and into the United States. By the early 20th century, he was seen as the central figure in understanding human behavior and inner life. He remained in Vienna until 1938, when rising Nazi power forced him, as a Jewish intellectual, to flee to London, where he died in 1939. Freud is often called the father of modern psychology. His work shaped therapy, culture, and the way society understands the human mind. And that is exactly why this conversation matters. Because when one man's ideas influence generations, we have a responsibility to look closely at what those ideas were built upon. At the beginning of his work, Freud listened to his patients. Many of them spoke about real experiences of childhood sexual abuse. He believed them. He developed what became known as the seduction theory. This theory recognized that trauma inflicted by others creates deep psychological suffering. This was a moment where psychology could have honored truth. Then something changed. Freud abandoned this theory. He reframed these lived experiences as fantasies created by the patients themselves. Real voices, real pain, recast as imagination. Masson's work raises a disturbing question. Why did Freud make this shift? At the time, acknowledging widespread abuse would have implicated powerful men and destabilized the social order. Freud's professional survival depended on acceptance by that same society. There are accounts that suggest financial and reputational pressures shaped his decisions. Patients who came forward with painful truths entered a system where their voices could be redirected, softened, or dismissed. This becomes more than theory. This becomes a question of integrity. When a practitioner holds power over vulnerable individuals, every choice carries weight. If truth is set aside in favor of status or financial security, the impact ripples outward into generations of care. Now we turn to one of Freud's most famous ideas, the Oedipus complex. This theory suggests that a child harbors unconscious desire for the opposite sex parent and rivalry toward the same sex parent. Let's sit with that clearly. A child expresses distress or confusion. Instead of asking what happened to this child, the framework asks what desire lives inside this child. From a grounded and logical perspective, this creates a profound distortion. It redirects attention away from possible external harm and places the focus entirely inside the child's psyche. This shift changes everything. It transforms victims into participants within their own suffering. It reframes trauma as fantasy. It reshapes the narrative in a way that protects systems and leaves individuals unseen. When this theory became widely accepted, it influenced generations of therapists, doctors, and institutions. Think about the consequence. How many voices were minimized because they did not fit the theory? How many people carried pain that was explained away instead of witnessed? This is where emotion enters, because it belongs here. We are talking about real people. Children who tried to speak. Adults who sought help and were met with reinterpretation instead of recognition. There is a weight to that. There is anger in that. A field that exists to support healing absorbed a framework that redirected truth at its foundation. And that choice continues to echo. When we speak about Freud, we are not discussing abstract ideas. We are looking at a legacy that influenced how suffering was understood, validated, or dismissed. Awareness brings responsibility. Freud's contributions shaped psychology, yet this deeper examination invites a different relationship with his work. Blind reverence gives way to conscious evaluation. We can acknowledge influence while also recognizing harm. We can move toward approaches that honor lived experience, embodied truth, and the intelligence of the human system. Modern trauma research continues to affirm what many voices expressed long ago: that the body and mind respond to real events, real violations, and real environments. The assault on truth opens a door. What we do with that awareness matters. The legacy of Sigmund Freud does not need to remain untouched. It can be examined, questioned, and understood in a fuller light. And in doing so, space opens for a more honest, compassionate, and truth-aligned form of healing. The assault on truth offers an invitation to question, to reflect, and to evolve. In the field of psychology, as in life, truth continues to unfold. Make sure to let us know if you found this video insightful. Thank you for sharing this space of inquiry. If this reflection speaks to you, feel free to continue the conversation and explore further.